On the Happy Workplace project today, we're joined by Chairman and Founder of Blueprint Interiors, Rob Day. Rob shares insights into how Blueprint create fantastic working spaces built around the psychological model Human Givens. He also spends a lot of time talking to us about what the office space of the future will look like. Hope you enjoy the episode. Rob, welcome to the Happy Workplace project. It's great to have you on board today. I wondered if we could start by getting some insight into your career journey and how you've ended up doing what you're doing with Blueprint Interiors today.
Yeah, so Blueprint will be 23 years old this year, so it seems a long time since I started at my dining room table on my own. But the journey before that, I suppose, starts just after my A-levels when I suppose I was always quite academic, but I was really heartily tired of education at that point. And so I decided I was going to be an international financier, and I went to work for Barclays Bank International. And the truth is, I went to live in Poole in Dorset, which is a beautiful place, and banking at junior grade at those times wasn't exactly an onerous task. So I think what I was quite lazy, but I did 2 years of that. And when I'd done enough sunbathing and windsurfing, I thought I'd better go and get a degree after all. So I phoned Lancaster University, and because I'd had some work experience, they basically snapped my hand off to go and do a degree in business and marketing, which I hasten to add requires 3 A stars now, so I wouldn't have got in these days. You know, I had an interest in, I felt like business was something I would be interested in doing, really. When I left, I had no idea what I wanted to do for a living. Met a chap through my sister who said, yeah, my boss is looking to recruit graduates at the moment, go for an interview with him. So I went for an interview, ostensibly for a job down in Bristol. And again, I was so shallow in those days, I'd dry up on a sunny day. I thought, well, I know Bristol, great place for a party. I'll happily live down there. What is it you do again? And it was something to do with pet food. I went, fair enough. Anyway, I went for my interview. I had a call the following day from my friend and he said, yeah, the boss has asked me to offer you a job, but with me. And I went, oh, great, what do you do? So we design and fit out pubs. So, okay, I know a bit about pubs, I think. So that was really how simple it was back in the day. Ultimately, I moved kind of sideways from the leisure sector into office fit out, office furniture and office fit out. And I did that for, I'm trying to think how long that would be now, because I'm really quite old. That would have been for about another 8 or 9 years. And at one point, I suddenly realised, I think I can do this better myself.
So tell us a bit about Blueprint Interiors. What's the mission that you guys are working towards?
Well, it's been refined over the years. When I started, I was fitting out offices and providing furniture solutions was the majority part of the business. But it's fair to say that it's, as my understanding of what it was we were really doing and providing, and my understanding of our industry and of course, work life, office life, I think it's fair to say now we dedicate ourselves to creating workplace environments for human beings. This is really the distinguishing factor, I believe, about Blueprint. So we understand that employees are human beings first and employees second, and that employers should realise that people are human. We've got some terrific insights into what it means to be a human being and what our fundamental needs are. So that informs our design ability.
So how would you describe the cultural climate that you aim to foster within your workspaces then?
There's our own workspace, of course. We have a fabulous office over at Ashby, which is, we hope, a living example of what good looks like. But of course, for our clients, our objective is to create great spaces for them and for their people. We encourage businesses to understand that people are the key to achieving their own commercial objectives. And actually the key thing here is empowering, entrusting, and then resourcing them as a prerequisite. So if you can have a great culture and great ideas, but if you don't action it, then it's doomed to failure, I'm afraid. So yeah, empower and entrustment, and there's an implication in that, isn't there, culturally, that we're actually grown-ups.
So how have people's preferences evolved over the last few years within the workspace?
Hybrid working,
yes,
however you define it, has become widely understood, and people have availed themselves of the opportunity wherever possible, I think it's fair to say. Of course, what they've really done is address those first 3 issues in Human Givens. So they've addressed their security, their personal security, their personal sense of control, and the autonomy that they feel they can execute over their daily existence. So those literally are, a pushback against the institutionalization of the traditional office. So I would say that's absolutely the bit, we're pushing against an open door now. The story we were telling, I think people understood us. We've been telling this story for a long time now, 5, 6, 7 years, as I say. We feel like we're pushing against an open door now. People are very receptive indeed to the ideas behind this. Well, why is hybrid working more successful? It's not the fact that you're working from home as opposed to working from the office. There are all sorts of technical reasons why sometimes that's better and sometimes it's worse, in fact. But the reality is it's giving people a sense of control, and not just a sense. It's not just a sop to it. It's genuine control. We genuinely want people to have a degree of control over what they do and how they do it. At the end of the day, you don't pay very bright people lots of money to do the job and then tell them how to do it, do you? So,
Absolutely not.
so there you go. That I think that's the simplest answer I can give on that.
Okay, Rob, so with that in mind, what influence has hybrid working had on the way that you design spaces then?
Well, it has had a big influence. As I say, we have been developing this for some time and evolving our understanding of it. But our ability to get direct feedback from clients has been really powerful. In fact, I suppose the key components are integration of technology. So it's interesting. Everybody's we can work on Teams now. Well, we've been using Teams and it's other things like Zoom and Starleaf. Other elements of it. We've been using that for a long time before COVID. And I think what a lot of people have begun to realise now is that it's not a panacea. It's not an alternative to a face-to-face meeting. It can be a second best in terms of actually physically seeing somebody, but in terms of the kind of communication, it's the reason we're not doing this on Teams. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the ability to communicate, collaborate, and have those human interactions that define us and make us better than computers still. Integrating tech is massive. So it's about knowing how to use it properly. So we're helping advise clients on how to adapt those processes. And interestingly, I suppose the thing we're doing more and more of, as I say, the consultancy side of our business has grown very significantly. The bit that we're doing in most cases with any significant science project is helping clients with their teams and holding workshops with them, either at their place or indeed at ours. We're just going through another refurbishment at our place now. So we've been at WorkLife in Ashby for 6 years, and we're creating space that facilitates those much more detailed and integrated workshops. So we're able to help deliver the cultural change. I mean, I suppose lots of people say they're involved in change management. I never thought I'd particularly describe ourselves as that, but in essence, that's what we're doing. We're helping our clients with change management, specifically with reference to the built environment, but actually in terms of technology, processes, behaviours as well. I mean, what we're really trying to do is help say your people can be empowered, can be entrusted, and here are the resources they need.
What's the biggest challenge your organisation's facing at the moment, Rob?
I think like most businesses, and has been a constant challenge for us since we started growing, so it's about getting the right people on board. It's not just people with the right sort of skills. Skills are learned, knowledge can be taught, but attitude's actually the big one, really. And people learn that, and they learn it. Attitude is a reflection of the culture that they're in as well. So I think, in terms of evolving our own culture, we really do endeavour to, we practice what we preach. We're quite democratic in terms of how we physically do things. My job and that of the other leaders in our business is to lead, and to think strategically. But actually, the bit that's really that we want to do is for everybody to reach their potential. Because if they all do, if everybody that we touch, our own people, our clients, if we help everybody achieve their potential, the aggregate effect is we'll achieve ours as a business.
Health and well-being has become really prevalent as a result of COVID, or been accelerated as a result of COVID. Yeah. What considerations can you provide for organisations that they should take into account of when trying to protect and enhance people's well-being within the workplace?
COVID as an experience, as a collective experience and as individual experiences, was a very powerful moment of learning for us all. We had lots of time. Some of us would have done a bit more physical exercise, some wouldn't. We had lots of time to think. The bit that for me, I think we've all learned, and the bit that we are absolutely, as I've already explained, is central to our philosophy, is the importance that people understand that they're human beings, not to define themselves as an employee working for 40 hours in exchange for X thousand a year. That sort of contractual exchange, I think, it's not helpful, because it doesn't encourage you to fulfill your potential. It encourages you to do what's necessary. And I think most people would prefer to be enthusiastic and passionate about something, and if it's work, fantastic. Imagine if work felt like your hobby. So I offer this actually as a question to clients sometimes. What do you do? What's your hobby? What do you do? It might be something like, I don't know, sailing. Well, fantastic, great sport, right? But you spend a significant proportion of your personal wealth in terms of time and money on something that actually has no material output for you, does it? Other than you feel good. Well, that's pretty important, isn't it? So that shows you how important it is that you put that value on your own personal health and well-being. So why would you put up with conditions that that perpetuate feelings of inadequacy, not performing well, just being unhappy generally? Mental health and well-being has historically been viewed as less important, or I think it's because it's just been less understood. I think most people have understood now it really is a thing. It's okay to not feel great on certain days. I saw a thing on LinkedIn this morning, actually, which I reposted, which was, I try to do my best every day, but every day my best is different. Sometimes it's down there. That's the best I can do today. That's okay. Sometimes it's up there. That's great too.
So, Rob, can we take a forward view and think about, let's say, 5 years' time? What do you anticipate that the office of the future will look like?
There's a bit of us that can't help feeling a wee bit smug, because we were saying 5 years ago, technology is really going to empower people, free people from the desk, and allow people to be much more mobile in their environment and physically where they work. So we have been working from home when it suits. It's some of our people live 20, 30 miles from the office. Well, if you've been to a meeting, why would you drive to the office just to be present in the office? So we've had a practical sort of approach to that, and we've resourced people so that they can work effectively from home. So moving server to the cloud, making sure people have got good internet connections at home, that sort of thing, giving them good quality furniture, but just essentially letting them decide where the optimum place is for them to work at that given moment. They're their best place to do it. They're smart people. We pay them to make those decisions. So the office of the future, it already looks like we thought it would do, which is good. So it's not rows of desks. It doesn't look like a battery farm. There's an argument that there'll be less offices, and I guess the one that immediately jumped to me was, watching Central London, Canary Wharf, hundreds of thousands of square feet. And I remember thinking, wow, it's crazy, isn't it, that people who are so highly paid, some of these kind of hedge fund guys, they're enormously well paid, and yet they're shoved into gilded cages, let's say, at best, but they're awful environments to work in. Why would you ever want to do that? And I genuinely think their time is over. Those huge, great production lines, I think, are over. And the thing that's really behind this, what's really going on, so the bit that I believe we've really understood is the change in dynamic in work itself. So what is work? So the reason offices kind of look like factories is because people were doing factory work in an office. So 30, 40 years ago, certainly when I worked for the bank, we moved paper. We literally moved paper from desk to desk, like you would move a piece of metal on a production line. And so that process was really very linear and very controlled, and you could simplify it and all the rest of it. And obviously in the last 20 years or so, we've been moving data, but we've been moving data in a very linear process nonetheless. The big change is AI. AI is coming, and in every day it impacts our lives more and more. The example I give to people is banking. The industry I first started in, there's a branch on every street corner. I usually hold my phone up to a client and go, mobile, that's banking. Every single mechanical bit of banking I need is on my phone in an app. So we're going to see more and more process automated. And so, some of the jobs that are being done right now, won't exist in certainly 10 years' time, and I'd say 5 years' time is very likely. I think there are jobs that will exist in 5 years' time that simply don't exist right now. So it always makes me smile, because my youngest grandson's 5 years old now, and I keep thinking, what are you going to do when you grow up? And the answer is I genuinely don't know, because that job probably doesn't exist right now. We will need to be better at thinking, problem solving, communicating, explaining.
Rob, let's talk about you for a bit. I'm really interested to understand how you would describe your leadership style.
Contrary to perhaps my personal style, I think I am very focused and I am very objective-led. I've set out to do some very specific things, and I think we're in the middle of achieving those, and some of them we have, and some we're ahead of the curve. Some we've still got some way to go. The one phrase for me that underpins everything else is win-win. If you win at my expense, you're +1, I'm -1. The mathematical result is net zero, different kind of net zero. If you win and I win, that's 1 + 1. We've actually created real wealth in the world, is the way I think of it. So win-win. It's a much nicer way to live. to have positive, constructive relationships with as many people as you can, and frankly, to avoid those people who want to be He wanted to achieve it through conflict. I just don't need to do that. That's what I realised. It's taken me a long time to realise that, but you don't need to do that. It's about having the simplest possible, clearest strategic vision, explaining it as clearly as possible so that nobody's in any doubt as to what the objective is, but then let them work out how to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And thinking about what you've just said there, what are the values that underpin the way that you operate and why are they personal to you?
These are personal to me, but interestingly, we specifically, about 7 years ago, as part of our whole rethinking about our marketing strategy, we set out to establish what our values were collectively as well as individually. So we ended up with something that we were all happy to subscribe to, and we actually use it as a filter for everything now. And the first one's dead simple. It's just love what you do. If you don't, it might be painful, and I know it might sound trite or patronising, but if you don't love what you do, plan to do something that you do love, because you'll be brilliant at it, you'll enjoy it, and it will ultimately get you closer to fulfilling your potential. So we've all done rotten jobs. You know, I worked in a biscuit factory for, as the lowest of the low, scraping bits of crusty biscuit off ovens as a student job. It's horrible. Money was good. Horrible conditions. You just put up with it for the time, don't you? There's a greater sort of objective part of it. Second one's creativity. So I know people go, oh yeah, but you're a design business. Well, we are a design business. I'm not a designer, but creativity for me is about problem solving, your attitude to what problems you're confronted with, what your clients tell you their problems are. Well, be creative. I especially like saying that to our accountants as well, because they go, creative accounting is actually sort of potentially a criminal offence, so it always makes them smile, but genuinely, you know what I mean. It's about think of new and better ways of doing something compared to how you did it today. And that's dead simple. And the last one is integrity, which is interesting. So when if we get somebody interviewing somebody, we have somebody new starting, I always say, what do you think the integrity bit means? It's like, we're honest, trustworthy, loyal, enthusiastic. Yeah, of course we're all those things, but not being funny, you don't go and tell somebody you've never met, hi, I'm Rob and I'm honest. No, what it is win-win. Yeah, so this whole idea of win-win. Integrity means, we want the big prize, the joint prize, yeah, the one that makes it better for all of us, and we do that through win-win. Yes, we have to negotiate hard. We get negotiated hard by our clients, and we do the same with our suppliers to make sure we find the best value in whatever project we're putting together. But we respect our mutual positions and the fact that we're here for the long term. It's not this sort of zero-sum game that some people try and play. It's not this, what's the lowest common denominator? We're always looking for the value in something.
What's the biggest misconception people have about you?
Probably I'm a soft touch, maybe. And I guess I kind of am in some ways, because I genuinely believe I try and give everybody absolutely one chance, first go. I'll go out of my way to do that. And you do get bitten sometimes, there's no question. And I think there are some times when you think people think they recognise something in you and they might try not to play for the win-win.
You've talked us through your journey so far, and it's been brilliant in terms of the progression that you've achieved and where you've got the business to. Could you maybe give us some insight into the sacrifices that have been made to get you to the point as to where you are today?
Sacrifice implies sometimes there's a choice, doesn't it, actually? I'm not sure there has always been a choice. I think there are always compromises. And there's, as I said, I might sound like an idealist in women, but if you don't go for that, then you won't get it. If you do go for it, but you don't quite get it, but you get something that looks and feels and sounds quite like it, then that's better probably than the alternative. So there are many things that I have done that I regret doing, that I would have done better, but we're all wise now. I'm 64 next September, so I'm definitely a bit wiser than I was 20 years ago, 23 years ago when I started out. I don't regret anything there, because I'm kind of fatalistic. It's not that kind of everything happens for a reason. Stuff happens, you either learn from it or you don't. I get up every morning excited by what's what's the unknown as well. There's stuff that I'm doing that I want to see happen, and I see my plans come to fruition, but there's stuff I still get excited about, that bit, the unknown. That lovely bit about being a human being. You meet new people every day. I love it. For many years, I felt like I'd missed my kids growing up. I'd be out the house at 7 a.m, sometimes earlier, and back after they'd gone to bed. And I felt like I used to see them at weekends sometimes. Now that's my perception, and they're all grown up now, my children. And I did actually mention this to them individually and collectively at one point. And it's interesting. They reassured me that's not how they remember it. So it's very important not to get bogged down in your own personal perception of whether you've done something right, wrong, badly, wrong, well, or whatever. You're looking in the mirror all the time, aren't you? Kind of thing. You're a reflection of everybody else you work with. So yeah, don't be too hard on yourself.
Could you describe your own relationship with your well-being, and is there anything that you do to protect and optimise it?
Well, my relationship with my own well-being has been mixed. Arguably I still need to focus much more on my own physical fitness because it's easy to not go out and do that exercise and all the rest of it. I guess unfortunately I had a sense of, a self-awareness about mental health and well-being for quite some time, I suppose. But the fact is that I was exposed to the whole notion of human givens by some deeply personal experiences within my family in terms of family health that affected me very badly, very, very badly indeed. And so my personal experience of psychology and mental health issues was trying to understand what was wrong with me and reading about human givens and literally going, that's a very simple explanation, not just what's going on with me right now, but that's the truth. This explains what goes on with people in a very simple way, in this overarching, all-embracing framework. So I have made very conscious decisions to ensure that after a particularly bad episode that I look after myself, try not to be too hard on myself in terms of being too self-critical, try to do more physical exercise. I always say I haven't got enough time, but I know I need to find more time to do that because I want to be around to see my grandchildren grow up as well. For some time now, I think probably for over 20 years, I've been working with a coach. Somebody who, it's interesting really, he listens to me and lets me talk, which I don't have any trouble doing, as you've probably worked out already by now. But it's an interesting technique. So basically he listens very carefully, steers me with the odd question until I talk it out and work it through myself and come up with hopefully the right answer to the question I was struggling with. A long time ago, I remember somebody saying, pay for the best advice you can afford and then take it. It was a pretty good general business or life lesson. So I've tried to do that. Surround yourself with really good people. Surround yourself with as many opinions as you can, physically take on board, I guess, as well. Perspective is everything, really.
What's the most difficult decision you've had to make so far in your career?
I have made some bad decisions about people I've brought on board, and they were the wrong people in the wrong seat, on the wrong bus, at the wrong time, and mutual agreement in most cases, we parted company. The very worst moment, I know exactly when it was in the financial crash where that year we were really experiencing some very solid growth. We'd literally could see us doubling our turnover that year, and by the halfway point we were absolutely on target. And then the outcome of the financial crash hit us as a business and industry generally, and we literally, I think we billed £100,000 in the remaining 6 months instead of $1 million. At the time, I can remember thinking, gosh, this sounds like a repeat of the Great Depression from the 1920s that I read about in history books. All the evidence was that we were simply not going to be able to sustain the growth that we'd undertaken over the previous few years. So the very worst decision was reducing the company down to myself and 2 core people, making 4 people redundant. In hindsight, actually being quite gratified by their response. So they seemed to be as concerned as much about me and the company as they were about themselves, which I thought was extraordinary. We had a great relationship. They've all gone on to, life sometimes pushes you off track and sends you down another path, and they're all doing really well. So who knows what it would have been like if we'd all stayed together. I suppose arguably now in hindsight, the worst moment of my business career became probably, I have to look back on it and think it was one of the biggest catalysts as well. So not something I would have chosen to do, but it's something that had to be done in order to ensure the survival of the business, and that who we are now and what we do, how we think, is probably those foundations were grounded in that moment. You're
heavily involved in the education space from a trustee perspective. What do you think schools need to be doing to help prepare people for the world of the future?
It's an opportunity here to celebrate what Lancaster Academy in Leicester does. So that's the school I work with very specifically, and the principal there, Anna Fisher, and her colleagues and predecessors have built a set of values in the school, which the acronym READY, READY. And those values, they exercise every day in every lesson and in every facet of the school life. And they're values that aren't necessarily they're not educational, technical educational. They're about how to behave, how to think. So READY. The first one is just be respectful. So, cooperate, creative, love what you do, win-win, treat people how you'd like to be treated yourself, so respect. E is employability. So you're here at school to learn and to get ready, unless you're very lucky, for the world of work, whether that's private sector, public sector, charity. Unless mum and dad's a millionaire and you're just going to sit there in a deck chair for the next 50, 60 years, you're going to have to work. And as I've already alluded, even if you can afford not to, you probably should. Yeah, so go and do something voluntary. So employability. We need to teach people what's employable mean. We've had people come to us for work experience and they didn't know how to answer a telephone. They didn't know how to speak to somebody. They had, because they were shy and all the rest of it, but nobody had said, look, this is how we talk to people, this is how we talk to people. I get called sir. I'm not sir, I'm Rob. If you've got to call your teacher sir, you've got to call him sir. Call me Rob. A, accountability. Be accountable for your own actions, your own behaviour. You're here to be taught, you're here because you're young and you've got lots to learn, but you are accountable. You have to take responsibility and be accountable for your own actions. You can come here and do nothing, or you can come here and try your hardest. So be accountable. That's really important, pretty important value that. It's something, to teach self-reliance, really important. Diversity, again, without any sort of political, racial, sexual connotation to it. It's about just celebrating the fact we're individuals. Everybody you meet, no matter what colour they are, what religion, that's totally irrelevant. They're going to be different to you. If they're the same colour, the same religion, the same sexual orientation, they're still going to be different. So diversity is accepting that we live in a world with currently 7 billion plus individual people. Yeah. So let's celebrate it and make it work for us. And then the fun one, the Y, is young ambassadorship. So it's to understand that they represent something more than just themselves. They represent Lancaster Academy, the school, their colleagues, the teachers. How they behave, how they present themselves to the world reflects on the school. And being part of something is actually another very specific human given. It's one of those specific categories in human givens, the need to feel identified and part of a community. So I think those values are what make Lancaster such a successful school when they've got the most extraordinary challenges in front of them, in terms of demographic, in terms of some of the history that's there as well. They have achieved extraordinary things and are held up by the LEP as an example of fantastic practice. I'm really proud to be associated with it. So those are the values that I would be exactly what I think is missing from current education. That's what helps people get ready for the world of work and ready to be a useful member of society and know how to behave in a community.
Okay, Rob, so what's your ultimate life goal?
I can answer that since September last year in, I think it's 4 sentences and 27 words. So I've already said how much value I've placed on coaching and talking to the right people. So there's a guy called Gary Dunstan. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but he helped me through. We went through quite a detailed process. It was enjoyable, sometimes quite painful as well, of just thinking through my ideas. And so I'll tell you exactly what my goal is. And the interesting thing was it's actually in the reverse order of what I set out. So I realised that I need to live my life peacefully. It's a prerequisite. It's not objective. That's actually a prerequisite. I need to live my life peacefully so that I can fulfil my potential, so that I can help fulfil Blueprint's potential or anybody else that I come into contact with. And then the phrase I use is so I step lightly off the boat. So I've got a passion for sailing and boats and stuff. And interestingly, because I've just bought another boat, so I'm stepping off one boat onto another. I love that analogy, but it's so clear in my head all the time. And I'm so grateful for those insights that I got with that work with Gary, that I can say it without prompting, and it's in my head all the time. And that's what's massively helped my own, I suppose, emotional intelligence, mental health and well-being. I need to live peacefully, not negotiable.
Love that.
Me too.
When you've achieved the things that you're aiming to achieve and you've finished, let's say, with your career, how would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as somebody who's done some good, but I kind of use the phrase, there are people who, when you meet people in life, there are people who add to your experience, aren't there? And there are people who sometimes quite honestly subtract from your experience. And then there are very worst cases, those people who are actually really divisive. So, in a room or in some kind of organisation, and I guess we've all met them, and they really are destructive. Yeah. And then even rarer still are those people who I would describe them as multipliers. So whatever they touch, whatever they do, there are unseen benefits. You start something, you don't know where it's going to end. You don't really know what the outcome is, but you just feel like you've done the best you can. And so to be thought of as somebody who's, I've tried to benefit as many people as I can, because that's fulfilling. That's what I'd like to be remembered as.
Okay, Rob, so we're on to our quickfire round. Number one is, what's something that you've achieved that you're proud of?
My dad said I wasn't mechanically minded. I remember him saying that. Rob, Bob, he used to call me, you're not really mechanically minded, he was such a nice guy otherwise, but I always felt a bit done down by that. So when I've done something like fixed a motorbike or, overcome some technical challenge or built something physically, like I've done at home, I quite enjoy DIY and stuff at home as well. I feel like if you could see me now, you'd go, yeah, actually I was wrong.
How did you react to your greatest failure?
I was determined for it not to be over.
What's something that you regret and would have done differently with hindsight?
Worrying about things I couldn't control. Somebody said to me, it's like paying interest on a debt you don't actually have.
Nice. What do you like most about yourself?
I try and see the best in people.
What's your biggest area of development?
I think it continues to be me. It's, by definition, it's the thing I've got most control over, I suppose, isn't it? I love continuing to learn and understand the world around me and the stuff I'm specifically trying to do. I just want to just get a better perspective, just keep on doing what I'm doing.
Keep moving forwards. Yeah. Tell us about something that you're passionate about.
I'm passionate about celebrating individuality, but working together as a team.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Always learn more than you think you need to.
And finally, what's one book or podcast that you recommend for our subscribers?
I suppose the one, I actually give it away every year to the scholarship winner for the prize I put up at Lancaster, and it's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits.
Fantastic. Rob, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for all the insights that you've shared, and good luck with everything that you're achieving at Blueprint already.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.